Hello and welcome to Empire of Wargames. My name is ePlash and today we are going to talk about the Genestealer Cult start collecting, as I didn't include it in my previous videos and I felt like the whole thing was a little bit incomplete without a video about them. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving a thumbs up, subscribing, as well as checking the links in the description down below. Let's go. Alright, so since I included every single start collecting box in one of my videos except the Genestealer Cults one, I decided to do a separate video for them today. It's technically another start collectings to buy before they get replaced video, so it's everything you would expect from a video like this. So here we go. Alright, first up we are starting with the cost and savings. So as you may have noticed, the savings are pretty incredible. We are talking at about 40%. The US usually saves a little bit more than that, which is surprising, but good for them because they usually pay more for everything else. So yeah, the savings for the US are 42%, Europe is a little bit lower usually, and the UK is right in the middle. But I'm somewhat surprised that I've never seen the Genestealer Cult as one of the expensive armies. But then you notice that they are somewhat similar to Imperial Guard, and yeah, the thought kicks in that yeah, Genestealer Cult might be way more expensive than one might assume from just looking at their kits on the GW website. Still, around 40% is amazing, especially considering the amount of plastic this box is packing. So monetarily speaking, this box is pretty great. It includes lots of bits as far as I can see on the sprues. So far so good. You're getting 17 models total, one of which is a vehicle. That's pretty good if you ask me. Now when it comes to the points though, that's a completely different story. We are sitting right around 230 points base, which is really not a lot. That basically solidifies that Genestealer Cults can be quite expensive if you don't plan on buying the start collecting multiple times, or you know, construct a buying plan on how you plan on expanding the start collecting into a 1000 or 2000 points army. But I'll go more into detail on that a little bit later. Now if we upgrade the list and give our units some sensible loadout options, more specifically heavy rock saws for the acolytes and mining laser for the neophytes, we are sitting right around 275 points, which is quite a bit off the 300 points mark I would usually like start collectings to hit once every unit in the box is equipped with a sensible loadout. Just to note that there will be some of you saying that you can assemble acolyte hybrids as hybrid metamorphs to get more points, but I really think they are not quite worth the 11 points per model they want us to pay, or GW wants us to pay, compared to the 8 points per model of the acolyte hybrids. Oh, and even if you include them instead of the acolyte hybrids, you are going to have to heavily invest into them to even crack the 290 point mark, as you can see here. So all in all, amazing savings, not so amazing points per money spent. Next up, let's take a quick look at the kits included. Alright, first up is the HQ choice of the box, the Acolyte Icon Ward. This guy is actually pretty good. He is a buffing machine for relatively cheap. 60 points for a 6-up Feel No Pain aura, and a morale reroll isn't bad, especially if you run Aberrants and benefit from that aura as well. If you keep on stacking a relic and a warlord trait on this guy, he'll give nearby units 5 different auras and buffs, which is kinda insane. So just to list all the auras up for you, here's a quick overview. So we have reroll 1s for your Aberrants Feel No Pain save, very specific but still cool. Sadly, Aberrants are not that good right now. Next is reroll morale checks. This one is nothing special but can be useful in niche situations. It's a nice to have basically. Then we have a 6-up Feel No Pain type save. This is the reason you are basically taking this guy. A 6-up Feel No Pain in a generally rather squishy army goes a very long way. Then you can give him a relic, Icon of the Cold Ascendant, which gives +1 strength in a 6-inch aura. This one is genuinely amazing because you're going to run some melee, and even your ranged units are likely to have some melee capability, which is kinda cool in Genestealer Cults, so I highly recommend taking this if you are able to grab it on your Icon Ward. Lastly, we have a warlord trait for the Hive Lords, which basically says reroll hit rolls of 1 for ranged units or for ranged attacks. This is great if you want to place the Icon Ward in the back and let him chill. For the example list I've created, I've given him everything because most units really benefit from both range buffs and strength basically melee buffs. So yeah, it's good to have both. So as I said, if you give your icon ward all of these things, he gets to be a all-around buffing god, giving 99% of your army some benefit or the other, whenever they are within 6 inches of him, which is not that easy. 6 inches is really not a lot, but it's pretty cool, especially considering most of the decent melee and ranged units can do pretty well if they get a little bit of support. They usually don't hit really well or have some other kind of troubles to deliver their great weapons, which Genestealer could really usually have. I would say he's a staple HQ, especially considering bigger games, because, you know, 60 points eats up only 1 HQ slot, possibly even twice. It really depends on the list, but I think it's a great HQ choice. And if you don't want to run like multiple of this guy, but you want to have multiple star collectings, just kit bash him into a Acolyte hybrid and you are good to go. It's relatively easy. Alright, next up are the Acolyte hybrids or the hybrid metamorphs. I've already said the most important things, but I give you some bullet points on why I prefer Acolyte hybrids personally. Number 1, Acolyte hybrids are troops. Hybrid metamorphs meanwhile are elites. Troops give OBSEC and objectives are extremely valuable in 9th edition. I say it time and time again, but it's really something to eternalize that troops do have a place, and especially if they are cheaper than most of your elite choices. Having OBSEC is really something to consider. Number 2, Acolyte hybrids cost 8 points per model, meanwhile metamorphs cost 11, with their cheapest loadout mind you. And I don't really see why or how they are worth 3 more points than Acolyte hybrids. They have more attacks and such, but getting them into melee is extremely difficult in my experience. Lastly, on number 3, I prefer the heavy rockstar over any weapon the metamorphs have access to. To be fair, metamorphs seem to focus number of attacks over the quality, but yeah, their stratagems like Violence Unleashed, their weapons and their general stat line all point towards that. The one time they worked really well was with an icon ward, giving them +1 strength versus Death Guard. That worked surprisingly well. As it stands, I would always assemble them as Acolyte hybrids. The metamorphs have very niche applications and I don't see myself using them a lot. But you have to keep in mind that these star collecting videos are usually released before the new codex releases and before they get their Combat Patrol box. So rules might change and yeah, you might need to take a look at that, but generally I would prefer the Acolyte hybrids over the metamorphs. If you get more Acolyte hybrids, consider running them in smaller units as spoilers for other units. Also equip them with a bunch of rock saws. I do think that the rock cutter has some applications, particularly against Death Guard. As you might have noticed, I've been playing a bunch against Death Guard. Meanwhile, I'm not a fan of the rock drill at all. The last problem is bits. You won't have enough bits to equip all of them with the optimal loadout. I think it's 1 rock cutter included and 1 rock drill included, and basically 1 of each heavy or special weapon, which is not nearly enough. I think I included a rock cutter or rock saw too much in our previous 270 points list, so keep that in mind because bits are almost always very limited, especially when it comes to special weapons. The Acolyte hybrids are decent and you'll need more of them. Oh, and the genetic lineage stratagem makes Acolyte hybrids actually go places and reach their destinations before they die. Another big plus for the Acolyte hybrids. Alright, let's go over the other troops choice in the box, the neophyte hybrids. These guys are your regular toughness tree troops to hold objectives or to screen more important units or objectives. They might seem like nothing special, but they have been instrumental to winning games, at least for me. If you plan on using them to just hold objectives and die, don't equip them with any expensive weapons and run them bare bones. If you plan to take them as a little more useful unit to actually get something done and kill stuff, I would run them with mining lasers, as they enable a rather cheap unit to actually put out a ton of wounds on big vehicles. And I'm talking toughness 8. The weapon being strength 9 is extremely nice. I'm really not that used to above strength 8 weapons, so it was actually really nice piloting them. And being able to destroy Lehman Russ rather easily feels pretty good. That's really all there is to say about them. They also benefit from all the auras from the icon ward, except the aberrant specific one. So equip them with mining lasers and enjoy. Just keep them behind cover to make them last a tiny bit longer. Together with that 6-up Feel No Pain from the Icon Ward, it should really work wonders. Lastly, we are going to cover the Achilles Ridge Runner. Let me start by saying that this model looks amazing and is one of my favorite 40k models. Secondly, they are fast, they are equipped with a heavy mining laser, and we've already determined that those are pretty good at destroying vehicles. If you equip them with flare launchers, you can even make them a little more durable and use them as distractions. And that's also how I like to use them, as cheap distractions that can actually put out some hurt on big single models should your opponent choose to ignore them. As with the other weapons, I'm personally not a big fan of the mortar or the rocket launcher, even though they look cool. If you're running 3 of them in a squad, you might consider one of those 2 weapons to, handle infantry models or lower toughness models. But even then, the mining lasers are just too good in my opinion. I'd say it's a decent vehicle for 70 points, just keep in mind that it's toughness 5 and 8 wounds, so 2 decent hits might make this thing fly off the table. If your opponent uses some vehicles, use the Achilles Ridge Runner as a scalpel and then use them as roadblocks once those vehicles or heavily armored targets are off the table. Alright, 500 points upgrades and upgrading in general. Now this part will be a little bit different. I'll be honest, usually whenever I do this, the answer is not clear cut. There are lots of ways to go, especially for armies that have tons of different kits and models and loadouts. Here the ideal starting point if you want to really drop some money on the Genestealer cult and have a sizable army, you're going to have to buy the star collecting around 3 times. I think 3 times is the sweet spot for a good core of Genestealer cults, because you can use any unit that's included more than once or twice, except the Icon Ward, and as I already said, you can just kit patch the Icon Ward in another Acolyte hybrid. And if you add a Brood Coven to that, for the HQs, you'll be basically set for a 1000 points army, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. And from there you can just expand either for the models you want, but it's going to be definitely more expensive than just, stacking, star collecting. It's really weird, actually. What I'm going to do here is I'll throw some example combat patrols on the screen. I've played all of them at least once, and I think they work well for small games. Yeah, if you want to give them a try, consider it. If you already play Genestealer Cult, just throw them together. I'm sure you'll have all the models available. All the models I will be using for those lists are either in the Star Collecting or in the Brood Coven box, so you'll have a great overview on what to buy. If you want to take a quick look at what's included in the Brood Coven, here's a picture, and yeah, take a look at the lists and try them out. So let's get to the conclusion. I wouldn't go ahead and recommend this box 3 times if I thought it was bad. The savings are amazing and all the units included are useful and can be easily kit bashed if needed. The low points you get per box really drag it down quite a bit though, since it's one of the lowest points per boxes out there. And that's a Genestealer type problem, like Genestealer cults type problem. Units tend to be very cheap and die fast, especially if you are not careful. Generally speaking though, it's a great star collecting to have, and I'm very curious on how they approach the Combat Patrol box whenever the Genestealer Cult Codex releases. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, click all the buttons and check all the links in the description below to support the channel. I see you in the next one. Bye.